Everyone in town knew about the yellow house on the hill. They spoke of it in hushed tones, the sagging roof, the peeling yellow paint curling like scorched skin, the broken fence that seemed to shudder even when the air was still. The B family lived there. Mr. B, the foreman at the Gresham plastic plant. Seat, his silent, sharp-eyed wife. Trevor, their sullen, sickly son. And Va, the girl with the glassy stare that made grown men stumble over their words. Mr. B had a system. He'd spot the lonely ones, the drifters, the ones looking for a fresh start, or a clean break. "Work the farm," he'd say. "Good pay, real easy. Dinner on the house." One by one, they went. None came back. At first, it was labor. Long days in dry fields under a dying sun, pulling rotten crops from the earth. Their hands cracked and bled, their backs stiffened under invisible weights, always under the watchful eyes of the B family. The invitation to the barn came when exhaustion dulled their judgment. Inside, it was worse than anyone could imagine. The air was heavy, a cloying, sickly mixture of old blood, rust, and something else. Something wrong. The workers barely had time to scream before the barn doors slammed shut behind them. What followed wasn't chaos. It was choreography. Mr. B moved with grim efficiency. Trevor obeyed, his hands trembling but sure. Seat and Va, they smiled. Restraints were fastened. The cries turned hoarse. The smell of sweat and terror thickened, but they didn't finish it quickly. They worked in slow, deliberate stages. The night stretched long, filled with wet, muffled sounds, and the sharp, metallic scent that clung to the skin and wouldn't wash off. Sometimes the victims were left hanging, barely conscious, as the family prepared what they needed. The less said about that, the better. When dawn finally broke, Seat would take what they had gathered into the kitchen. There, the real transformation began. She marinated the cuts overnight, drowning them in sharp lime, fiery peppers, crushed herbs, and pungent garlic until the rawness was masked by mouth-watering scents. The next morning, she melted brown sugar until it hissed and spat, turning black at the edges. Into it, she dropped the meat, sealing it in a dark, glossy shell. Pigeon peas, coconut milk, and seasoned rice followed, simmering slowly until the rich stew bubbled thick and fragrant. Finger bones, fragments of ribs, occasionally surfaced among the grains, quickly stirred back under with a practiced hand. To anyone unaware, it was simply a feast, savory, aromatic, impossible to resist. The B family ate heartily. The yellow house thrummed with the sounds of clinking forks, soft laughter and distant, hollow sobs drifting from the locked barn. It might have continued for years, if not for a single survivor. One night, a woman managed to wrench free from her bonds. She staggered into the woods, half blind, dripping blood and fear behind her like breadcrumbs. She made it to the edge of town, collapsing beneath a street lamp. The sheriff who found her said she was little more than a whisper of a person. Her arms were scored with rope burns, her clothes were shredded, her voice was cracked from screaming. When they raided the house on the hill, the scene inside stunned even the most hardened officers. The barn was wrong. Steel tables lined with empty restraints, dark stains soaked deep into the floorboards, foul-smelling barrels tucked into shadowed corners. Upstairs in the kitchen, a pot still simmered on the stove, rich, heavy aromas curling into the rafters. When the officers opened the lid, they recoiled. Among the soft rice and tender peas floated a single, unmistakable remnant, a wedding ring still clinging to a sliver of charred bone. Mr. B fought like a cornered animal. He didn't survive. Seat tried to flee through the back fields but collapsed under the weight of her crimes. Trevor surrendered immediately, weeping, babbling apologies no one wanted to hear. Va. She sat calmly at the dining table, a plate of steaming food before her, hands folded neatly in her lap. When they handcuffed her, she only said, you'll miss the taste. The yellow house still stands, rotting into the earth. On certain nights, when the mist rolls low across the fields, a smell drifts down into town, sweet, smoky, warm, and unmistakably wrong. People pull their windows shut, they whisper prayers, and they do not look toward the hill, because some hungers are never truly satisfied.